Stash is all about.
Holly said I could do it, and then I was like, well, shoot.
I would be shunned from my house if I did that.
It's not even like a full mustache.
No, it's
like
got to be
kind of half in.
All or nothing. There's no half-ass in it. Okay.
All right. Hey, guys, we're live on the Where to Hunt podcast. I think we're live. I always ask the first few folks to jump in, to give me a comment, let us know that you can hear us. Greg and I are sharing a mic. We got a guest in studio with us. Studio, I use that term loosely. Let me just get my bearings here real quick, and I'll dive in. So, first and foremost, big call out to our title sponsor, which is Backwoods Grind Coffee. So if you are watching this right now, and we look at the window here, like the screen, you can see their website. We got our buddy Tyler on the screen, which is kind of cool. But what I like to call out most from Backwoods Grind is their sampler packs. And so if you look at this one here or this one here, for $8, you get 3 different samples that are different blends that they offer. I always joke, but I'm not joking. You guys smell the coffee coming from this website, right? It's not just me. Their website smells like coffee.
Or I smell it from your pores from all the stuff you drink today.
So if it wasn't for Backwoods Grind...
We are a little up close and personal.
We are. We're sharing some space. I wouldn't have the energy to do this show. I got a newborn, a 2-year-old, a day job, and so like this coffee really does fuel me and keep me going. If you want to save money on Backwoods Grind Coffee, you got to look at the sheet here. Enter in code W2H Podcast. You get 10% off. And then to switch gears, switch shoes, switch boots, want to call out our sponsor, Gumleaf USA, gumleafusa.com. If you notice here, these boots are handmade. This is not like any other boot you're going to find in the market at the big box stores. These guys do not go to the big box stores for a lot of reasons, but one of them is scalability. They can only sell these things in small batches because they're made by hand. So these are high-quality boots. You're going to pay a little bit more, but they're going to last you a lot more seasons. They're real rubber, not synthetic. They're not a blend. They're not going to break down and get brittle and get punctured, etc. So I compare them to being about as comfortable as the Crocs that I wear 24/7. Just a lot more practical in the woods.
Fruitcake in his Crocs.
That's right. And if you want to save money on some shipping because it is a bigger ticket item, you can enter in code W2H 2019, and that'll get you free shipping. So you're probably all wondering who is in the studio with us. And let me just switch back here. Losing my bearings is what happens. Mitch Baker is with us, and we're here to talk about CWD. But before we get into all of that, Mitch, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Oh, where do you want to start?
Well, do you hunt public land or private land?
Both.
Okay. What do you do? You like the challenge of public?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love. I go out west. I hunt public. I grew up in Ladysmith, up northern Wisconsin.
Okay.
And hunted kind of a combination of both. It was pulp company land.
Sure.
So
okay.
Privately owned but open to the public. Yeah. So, you could run into people. Absolutely. Out there. Anybody could be out there. So that's where I grew up hunting. It actually was a place where my dad grew up hunting.
Sure.
And it was one of his buddy's dad's farms.
Okay.
So that's where I started, and then I moved down to La Crosse area for college, and down there.
And here you are.
Open to the public. Not as many opportunities for public land. We did do some public land hunting there, but down there I started bow hunting and started getting permissions, and
okay,
we're working through that.
So bow hunter, do you do the traditional Blaze Orange Army gun hunting stuff too?
Yeah, I go up for that. And I mean, Now I'm not as excited about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just like to do things the hard way. I think that's what it boils down to, and to go out west and go to the most rugged, roughest looking place on the map and go looking for elk and deer there. So.
Well, and for those of you that can't see, the hat and the shirt you're wearing, Train to Hunt. So I went to that event. I did not participate, and I regret it, I think, a little bit. Although now that I see you, I would have lost my ass too. So we're pretty fit.
We're in different age classes.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe from the Fountain of Youth or something.
Yeah, well, I'm over 40, so.
Yeah, I would not have
40. So.
Yep, 33, and you
wouldn't have had to compete with me at all.
I don't know about that.
You just got to compete with the mountain. That's what that game's all about.
Okay.
Is competing against yourself anyway. So just going out and making yourself better. That's what the train to hunt program's about.
I dig
So
it.
that my reason for working out is if somebody calls me next week or whatever and says, hey, we've got a spot open to do X hunt out west or on some mountain, I want to be able to be the guy that says, I'm ready, man. I can go do that if called upon.
Sure. You don't gotta wait
Because
a month to get in shape or whatever.
yeah, and most places, if it's a sheep hunt or some of those places, a month's not enough. It really isn't. It's become now a year round. Just staying there is a lot easier, especially when you get older.
Yeah.
Staying ready for the mountain is a lot easier than getting back ready for it. So
That makes sense.
yeah, you missed a big one there. That was
Well, according to Anthony, he
Hardcore
really got
workout.
his ass kicked. He said so,
that was
which it looked like an ass kicking, but I like that stuff.
it was more than is typical for a regular regional train to hunt event. It was about an hour for the faster people to finish,
Jeez.
Wow.
and that's a long grind on a hot.
It was hot. Dude. It was
Humid.
really hot.
Is it at the
Mountain.
same place every time?
No, 2 years ago it was up north at a place up by Somerset, and that was in comparison that was finishing in about 25 minutes
Oh,
or
really?
so.
Wow.
And most of the events this year were even like finishing 35, but he went above and beyond for this one and really made it challenging. So
I would say.
anyway, it was maybe a good one to miss, but it was a
Yeah.
good workout. Made us all better.
Yeah, it looked like man, just the packs and the jumping and all of it, the sprinting up and down, the big hike, the shooting.
Yeah,
Like
shooting with an elevated heart rate is the name of
That's
that game,
tough.
and being able to calm yourself and still be able to squeeze that trigger and know where that arrow is going in the right spot is
yeah, because you missed,
That's
and
the
you got to
skill.
do more push-ups, right, or whatever it was.
yeah.
Or
If
burpees
you missed the 3D target, you're doing 20 burpee penalty.
Oh.
You don't want to do 20 extra burpees
because it makes the next
Ever.
shot even harder. No, no.
ever.
So you're fit, you're over 40, you don't look it, you kick our asses, and
Not yet.
we haven't given you a reason to yet, but man, Greg, we are close. I'm glad we know each other well.
I feel like I need to scoot in just so that we're more
I know, and
symmetrical.
I got a lot.
You're gonna be taking your flannel off just to regulate heat here.
because you're hitting on me, I guess.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the topic that we're going to get into is CWD, CWD, not
Yep,
CWD.
chronic
right?
wasting
Yeah.
disease.
And how did you? I'm just looking away from you talking. Like, how did you get into that? Like, what brought you into that fold?
I was hunting in Wisconsin when CWD first came out, and we brought our deer in to get them tested and the whole deal, and met my wife in La Crosse there, and we moved away, and we were out of the state for about 8 years.
Okay.
We came back, and I came back to hunt on my in-laws' place a few times, and always got my deer tested, even though they're not near the
The zone.
the
right?
hot zone.
Mhm.
But we moved back and started getting involved with backcountry hunters and anglers and just paying attention to what's going on. We decided, hey, we want to be more involved in just everything outdoors related here. So got on the Wisconsin Conservation Congress
Okay.
for Sauk County, and then the County Deer Advisory Council. So that got me into the thick of all the conversations, and I just knew that there was more that we could do to just educate people, because we're in Sauk County. Sauk County last year had 20% prevalence in the deer that were tested. We're in northern Sauk County. It's not nearly as high in the northern part of the county, but we need to educate ourselves so we can help educate other people on why it's important to pay attention to what recommendations are, and why the Department of Natural Resources is asking us to do the things they're asking us to do. So we really did a deep dive on what's going on with this, and my wife has a medical background, so she can dig into the research papers and know what's real and what isn't, and I can ask her and say, is this following protocol for research? And she's like, yeah, these papers are good. Let's focus on them. So
yeah, and I did some quick research and just looked up the numbers through the DNR website. And Sauk County is top 4 for most prevalence in CWD. So it's kind of battling with Richland the way it looks, but when with the amount of samples that are taken, those two counties are like 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. And this year it could flop if a few more people test.
Yeah,
to have their deer tested.
Yeah, we're trying to expand the testing program in our area. But yeah, you're exactly right. Sauk County is the southern part of Sauk County is extremely high. If you go on the DNR's website and click on CWD prevalence, there's a couple of dots on there that you can click on that. I think it's like a 4 township area that they've been compiling results for that specific area since the beginning. So they have graphs that you can see year by year the prevalence rate for bucks, does, adult bucks, adult does, and then yearling does, yearling bucks. Yep, that's the map there.
Yeah, it's all in the western part of the state.
So if you zoom in on that, those are those spots where they've decided to really focus and make sure they keep they've been keeping those records, and that's I believe that's Grant County, the one in eastern.
That's where I hunt,
Grant
actually,
County.
so that's fascinating.
So if you look at that, you looked at basically it was at 0 until like 2010. And look at that adult bucks, that top line is really, really ramping up. I mean, it's up to
That's
over
an exponential
20%.
That's an exponential curve.
It's over 20%.
There's a lot of verticality in that.
Yeah.
And the research is showing too that it's most prevalent in bucks, correct?
Yep. Bucks are the ones that seem to contract it more often. And they think that's because of just their nature. They're traveling around. Yeah. They roam. They contact all the deer in their area basically during the rut. They're sniffing all the does. They're running off the other bucks. Mm-hmm. They're all hitting scrapes. They're all doing these things that deer do. So the bucks are the ones that seem to get it. That's what they're assuming is the issue.
Right.
And part of the problem with that is we haven't really gotten. We'll get into spread, but those yearling bucks are the ones that disperse.
Yep.
They get kicked out of the nest from mama, and they take off and sometimes go a pretty great distance to set up shop.
Sure.
So that's one way that CWD spreads across the landscape, by deer just moving. And I read a paper. I was actually looking at it last night real quick because I just found out yesterday I was going to come here. So I'd whip through one really good paper that I have, and they talk about how that high deer density increases that dispersal rate. Obviously, when you have a high deer density, a lot of deer, you have more younger bucks. And then those younger bucks disperse, they end up going farther, and there's more of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's part of the reason population control is one of the key factors to kind of slowing down the spread.
Yeah.
So it's not a total exercise in futility, but we want to control what we can control.
Yeah,
is what I've kind of learned from some of this. Like clearly, there's enough of it outside of our control, and there's still a lot of understanding. Maybe before we talk about controlling it, what I found interesting when I listened to you on the other podcast, Hunt Health Harvest. Am I getting it right?
Harvest,
Thank you.
Hunt Harvest Health.
See, give me something and I'll mess it up every time. But you talked about prions and proteins, and this is not a living organism. It's not killable, which makes it very challenging to understand, study, and deal with.
It is really hard to deal with. Yeah, they're not able to get rid of those prions, is I believe the way that's pronounced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's easy to say it the other way, and I'll probably say it the other way once or twice here, but prions, you have to get them up to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit to.
Wow.
It seems.
What is that comparable to? Like the sun?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really hot,
Let's
and
talk about that.
you can't just start a fire and burn a carcass and have it go away.
No, you can't give it a Viking funeral and expect it all to disappear.
No. So
you
can't
could
just
try,
burn a
but
pit and have it
they'd just be
go away.
entertaining. Yeah.
These prions. What's interesting about prions is they're very difficult. They're a protein. They're not like a bacteria or a virus like most things that infect people.
Right.
It's a protein that exists in our bodies. All of us have these prions in our bodies, and they're still researching what prions, the not infective ones, what those do. They don't even know that for sure because they're so hard to study because they're not alive. They're not something that you can just throw in a petri dish and grow more of them and then work with them and figure out what works and what doesn't. It's just a really, really difficult thing to work on. So, there's a lot of people doing research on these prion diseases, and it's going to be a little while because they're not.
Yeah, like decades, arguably, right?
Yeah.
And so, what can we do now to deal with that? I mean, starting by just educating ourselves, right?
Yeah, educate ourselves, and when this first came out, 2002, when it showed up in Wisconsin, it was new. There wasn't a recipe for dealing with it, and the Department of Natural Resources made some decisions, did some things, and they end up with some hunters that were upset about the way things went, and understandably so in a lot of cases. They didn't understand how important it was to do some of the things the department was asking, and the department was taking educated guesses.
Yep.
Now we're 18 years past that.
It's crazy
or
to think about.
16 years beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot been learned since then.
What are some of the biggest things? We were chatting offline when you got here and talking about, like, I was a senior in high school in 2004, and I was writing like some sort of BS research paper about it for a debate class, and the rhetoric then was, this is a conspiracy that the DNR has spun. How have things progressed since that initial reaction?
That still exists. Yeah. People, you'll still hear people say that from time to time, and the DNR is doing it, or they're getting paid by insurance companies because insurance companies don't want to pay for car deer collision. There's a lot of things out there like that.
Wow, it goes that deep. Okay.
Yeah, there's probably, you dig deep enough, you just Google search why are people making up CWD, you probably get alien conspiracy theories.
Everything just leads to alien.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, but there's just been a ton of research done since then. The previous research that had been done was on CWD out in western states, Colorado, Wyoming, and
mule deer herd.
Central Wisconsin
And that was
is a
years
completely different place. It's a different dynamic of how animals live and move and go about their lives.
All different terrain.
So, our crops, the animals stay put out west. They migrate, a lot of them. So there's a lot of different dynamics. So I have nothing. No, I'm no part of the DNR by any means, and wasn't back then. But
the science has changed.
Yeah, like I said, they're making educated guesses off what they had learned out west, and now we're the state that other states are learning from when they can contract CWD.
Because we have the baddest, right, or the worst.
We've had it for the longest, as far as we know, in a whitetail herd in the central U.S. And we've been trying to deal with it in different ways, and people can look at what we as a state did and see what worked and what maybe didn't. And there's a lot of things you can't tell if it worked or not because it's not a scientific study.
Right.
They're trying things, and Now you find out, well, that didn't work. Now look at that prevalence graph going way up.
Mhm.
And is that because that's the way disease works? Is it because we stopped the aggressive harvest management practices?
There's too many variables.
There's so many variables, you can't say that this is...
And we don't understand a lot about it.
Yeah, we understand that it's spread from deer to deer. It's spread through the soil.
Plant to deer.
Plants, it can be taken up by plants, and they're not sure on what the transmissibility, is that a word?
Yeah.
Transmissibility, I'm going to use it like it's a word.
Just
They're not sure what the transmissibility is from plants to animals. They haven't really...
They haven't been able to like break down stomach contents.
They haven't been able to dig in to see if there is
something in the plant
as deep as they know the other things, because that's something that's fairly recent that they've found, that especially where deer carcasses lay on the landscape, the plant roots will are able to uptake those misfolded prion proteins, which I think kind of skipped over how the prion proteins...
That's okay.
And I'm just apparently going to just ramble this whole time. And
This is great. This is what we're here for.
That's what
so
we
like
do.
I said, we all have those prions in our body, and what happens is these prion proteins that are the infectious kind get uptake through the deer's eating something off the ground. They get the dirt in their nostril, in their mouth.
They ingest it.
They ingest it, and that misfolded protein that is infectious gets in their system and binds to a regular prion protein that
Something
we all
that's
have,
naturally produced that we all have.
and causes it to misfold, and then that just continues to escalate.
And it almost seems like some deer have it and some deer don't. But eventually
They
all have it.
There's no known genetic There's no known genetic immunity to CWD. There's what they call resistance, which is it takes a deer longer to die from it.
Sure.
And there's a lot of research being done into... A lot of deer farms are working on these genetic modifications to try to create a deer that is
the perfect deer.
Yeah, that is not susceptible to CWD, which, so far as I see it, I mean, great. I hope they find something, but I don't know how that's going to affect the wild deer.
Right.
We're not going to genetically modify all the wild deer. It's a really tough thing to envision at this point.
Yeah.
We talked about this, everything leads to alien, but how many times have you heard people talk about the word zombie in these
Zombie
conversations,
deer. Zombie
right?
deer.
Just in general.
Yeah, and
Some zombie apocalypse.
yeah,
Like this is
it's a scare tactic, basically. It sounds like, but it is something that we should be scared of to a degree. It's a thing where these deer, eventually, these prions build up in their brain, and their brain just stops functioning properly. They're not able to eat or swallow, and eventually they die. They're wandering around like a zombie, and that's where it
They're
comes
not
from.
eating.
They're not scared of humans. They're in people's yards. They're, people can walk right up to them, and they're really skinny. And so that's where, because it's a brain disease, and they have the 10,000 yard stare, and
Yeah.
you can see where it comes from. But it's something to be concerned about. Maybe not a zombie apocalypse
Sure.
concerned about, but it's something that we really need to do what we can do to prevent it from spreading to all of the deer. Prevent the deer apocalypse.
because what can this do to hunting as a whole then, right? If we don't have a deer herd population, then what do we do, right?
Yeah, that's a humongous problem for...
You'll be a trophy squirrel hunter then.
Yeah, and the problem with that is deer are the resource that funds basically all of game management in every state. Like, you want to save squirrels or brook trout or anything like that,
Right.
the major funding source is deer hunting.
Deer tags.
That's the cash cow for all of the resources for the most part when it comes to DNR funding.
Right.
Obviously, you got the Pittman-Robertson Act, and there's a lot of money that comes in through that.
Sure.
But
Duck stamps.
yeah, there's a lot of other sources, but without a deer herd, that's
If you look at a pie,
hundreds
right?
of
The
thousands
sliver of
of
the pie
people.
for deer is
Yeah.
what, the majority of it.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of people that aren't going to show up to hunt, and we've seen that even in Sauk County at our CDAC meetings and the comments after the initial CDAC meeting. People saying, shot a deer last year, CWD positive. This is the second one. I'm gonna find somewhere else to hunt.
Yeah. Done.
And yeah, I worked hard to get this deer. I can't, or I'm not gonna eat it,
Right.
and now I have nothing. So I'm gonna go somewhere where, if I shoot something, I can at least be relatively certain I can eat it. So it's gonna affect people going to areas and hunting, and we see it. There's statistics in Iowa County where property values are going down. That was a big buck
That's something I
mecca.
wouldn't have considered at all.
Yeah.
Like, people buy hunting property to go hunt there, and that's changing.
Yeah.
People are selling. Those property values are going down, and that's not good for a county. It's not good for any small
economy,
communities, and
right?
it's not good. And I know a guy who hunted in Iowa County. He leased land.
Mm-hmm.
Him and several friends leased a big chunk of land in Iowa County to hunt big bucks, and they turned it away this year. Said that's it. Every deer we've shot, 13 for 13
Wow.
bucks were CWD positive. So it's and now they're not growing the older age class bucks, because that's the way the disease works. It affects bucks. The younger bucks are starting to get it more frequently.
Yeah.
And so it's a disease that takes a year and a half, 2 years to kill a deer. So you start getting a year and a half old deer getting CWD, math says you're going to get a maximum of 3.5-year-old deer there.
Sure.
There's going to be other ones that slip through the cracks, and there's going to be other big bucks, but finding a 5.5 or 6.5-year-old buck in the first place is hard enough as it is, and now you're taking more of them out of the mix by having them die off of a disease.
We got some questions from Liz. She's asking the good questions.
Okay, good.
You want to ask them since you're by the mic?
All right. Liz asks, what should I do with the deer carcass if it tests positive for CWD? Can I get another buck tag if my buck tests positive for CWD?
Good question, huh?
That is a fantastic question. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks,
Almost
Liz.
almost like you were planning.
Yes, that's something that a lot of people don't know is
I didn't know that.
if you get a CWD positive test back, you get a new tag.
Now, is this implemented just this year, and is it in the hot zone where you live?
It is, as far as I know, statewide.
Really?
Yep, and it was available last year.
Interesting.
Sure. So
Where do you get it tested?
there's a lot of different places around the state. On the DNR website, and actually I'll finish one sentence before I start another one. On the DNR website, search CWD. They redid their website this year, and they make it pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
You can click on testing. Also, when you register your deer, if you register it on Go Wild, you get a confirmation email, and it on there has a link to find testing sites as well as disposal sites. So yes, if you have CWD positive deer, do not put it on the landscape. Find a disposal site. Make sure it ends up in a landfill.
Sure.
Both of those things, like I said, are available on the DNR website. And on the Go Wild app, there is a tab that you can click on that says testing and disposal. CWD testing and disposal. They've done a lot this year.
And testing kiosks are where you're dropping most of your stuff off. And stuff meaning heads. So in my case last year, I had all 3 of my deer tested. In my area in Jefferson County, there's a spot where I can go. Went and was able to take the head, fill out the paperwork, and if I had any information that didn't seem quite right to them, if I screwed up some numbers, they actually called me, and the biologist from the field office called me and said, hey, these numbers don't seem quite right. Where were you? So I have a conversation, what 2 crossroads I was at on a certain public hunting ground, and okay, yeah, you had that kind of goofed up. Oops.
Yeah.
But they corrected it, and I had 3, negative
Good.
tests, so it was good. I got a question here I see from Stu Anderson. Can anyone give advice on taxidermy process if you want to test a buck for CWD, but still do a Euro mount? I know for a shoulder mount, the taxidermist can give you back the skull spine for testing, but obviously the Euro mount requires keeping the skull.
Yep.
Well, so I guess
Absolutely.
I can answer some of this to say, one, I had my buck tested, so I caped it out, had the skull intact. I raised it off at the axis joint, and I left enough material in the neck, enough muscle and the node, the lymph node that's in there. So they don't actually take the skull and the spine when they do this test. They take the lymph nodes.
Yeah, that's a.
And they look like a ball of fat. That's all they look like.
Yeah, and they recommend leaving 4 to 5 inches on that neck, because if you cut it off right at that joint, you can sometimes, because those lymph nodes are in different spots.
Yeah,
you can.
Mine was actually a little further down. I actually razored the back third of one of them off.
Yeah,
I thought I left enough, and he's like, "Oh, we got enough here to test it." But to be clear, they actually don't need the skull. You bring the skull in with enough of the neck material so they can actually retrieve that lymph node from the neck material.
Yep. On the DNR website, they have a list of taxidermists. You can contact your county wildlife biologist, and they could come and just pop them out for you once it's skinned up, at least you wouldn't have to skin it up, totally over the face, but get it up above the neck, and they could come and take them out for you. Around me, we've got Liz and I have adopted a kiosk last year.
Cool.
So we, if somebody calls me and says, "What do I do about this?" We've been trained to go and just
dig them
pop
out,
the lymph nodes out, and that way, it makes it easy for everybody.
Yeah, and mine, I actually did an Instagram video on my account. It might even be in my IGTV account or something, where I filmed the biologist. I got to know the biologist, so I got his phone number. I can call him and say, hey, and that's what he told me to do when I ran into him, is if you get one you want to mount, rather than sending the whole skull in and all that stuff, because they don't actually send the skull in, they just take the nodes out and to get rid of it. But it was real simple. Called him. He met me down there at a specific time before work. Worked out pretty good. Went down there. He went in there with a scalpel, cut him right out. We filled out all the information, and I was on my way in 15 minutes maybe.
Yep. How long does it take to get the test results back?
Depends on the time of the season. So my doe that I shot at the beginning of October, I think that was 2 weeks, and I had results. Great, because I spent the time and packaged it up and had it all deboned and everything. The buck took maybe a few days longer because it was beginning of November. Mm-hmm. And then the doe from gun season, I probably didn't see that from 3 weeks, but you got to remember now the volume of deer that are coming into these labs by now got to be stacking up.
Yeah, a lot of it is just getting those samples to the lab.
Yep.
It really only takes a few days to get the test done. It's dependent on where you are in the state in relation to the lab. Is a lot of it, because
makes sense.
Somebody has to pick up that, if it's at a kiosk, somebody has to pick up those heads, bring them somewhere, then they extract all the lymph nodes and do all that, and then those lymph nodes then go to the lab. But by me, a lot of times it was 7 days last week. And if you drop your head off at a kiosk, and they only come to pick them up once a week.
Right.
You drop it off on Tuesday and they pick up on Mondays, it's going to be a week before they pick
Right.
your
And
head
some
up.
of
So
them
it's,
kiosks get pretty ripe after a while.
yeah. And so that's the department just doesn't have enough
Right.
manpower to just go and check these things all the time. And a lot of times, even by us, I only live 10 minutes from where we have a kiosk there in Laval, and it says on there, text this number if you
Yep.
get a deer. And some, you know,
My kiosk is over in Lake Mills. So they have a field office there, and I think their days, they might be there 3 days out of the week or something. It depends on what they have going on. If they're planting a lot of birds or stocking or doing whatever. But it's the same thing. There's a number, text or call this number.
yeah, a lot of people don't do that.
No.
And I'll go down there like, oh geez, there's 5 in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody texts, but it's been really good this year.
Well, the other question Liz had asked was, how do we help slow the spreading of the disease? And I have a question too, but we'll let you answer Liz's first. She has better questions than me.
yeah,
For obvious reasons.
She's trained.
yeah. Few ways. One of the ways that us as hunters can just prevent the spread is make sure that our deer carcasses don't go back on the landscape. We don't know if our deer is CWD positive until we get our test results back.
Right.
But what we can do when we process your deer is make sure that those bones end up in a dumpster that's going specific for deer carcasses, or bagged and go into a landfill.
And they'll heat it to the temperature of the sun.
Oh, they bury it in the landfill.
Right.
What happens is those prions bind to clay really well. So in these clay-lined landfills, as that deteriorates, it soaks down into the clay, binds to that clay, and it's not going to wash out of there. It's not like just sitting there filtering down through the ground out in the landscape. It binds actually to particles of clay for some reason really well. So those clay-lined landfills, the studies being done that show that they hold in there. That's the best way. There's also there's a new study started where they're composting deer carcasses. I don't know much about the study, but it's ongoing. Just started, I think, this year on an old, I think it was a depopulated deer farm there. They were
really?
composting deer carcasses to find out how effective that is. So there may be more options down the line, but we're working to try to get deer carcass disposal dumpsters out across the state in all the counties. But check that map on the DNR's website and find out where they are now. This year, the department is offering a cost share program for anyone who wants to get a dumpster out on the landscape. They're doing up to $500 cost share per dumpster, 2 per each county.
Okay.
So sportsmen's clubs or whoever needs to step up and say, we want this, we have a place for it to go. And then really they have to do all the work and then put in for this grant money after the fact.
Sure.
So they'll get half of what the total cost is.
So I hunt a state park. It'd be interesting to know if we could deploy these at the various state parks that allow hunting.
Last year there was one on state land near Madison.
Okay.
At the Goose Lake. Backcountry hunters and anglers were able to get that out kind of last minute with the help of the Southern Region deer biologist Eric Canania. He really was working hard to get. There's some legal issues as far as getting things like that placed on state land, and Eric really did he was working really hard to get that done, and then Liz worked with him to get it
Is it just so people know? Is it just like a construction site dumpster, like a roll off?
Yep, it's a roll off dumpster, like
and
a 20-yard roll-off dumpster.
Does it look like anything, or is it branded a certain way, or how is it identified?
It's got a big plastic wrapper inside of it.
Okay, so it could be any company that drops it.
Yeah,
but then it'll
say deer carcasses only.
Big sign on it.
Yeah, that's what we did last year. We wanted to make sure. One big worry was last year, kind of being the pilot year for the program.
You got people from all different counties coming, I bet.
Yeah, and people were worried. Well, geez, they're going to be throwing everything in there,
Right.
And there'd be chairs and everything else. Well, put a big sign up, deer carcasses only, and we really didn't run into any problems last year.
That's good.
So hopefully we can continue that.
Liz coming at us with more great questions. So before I ask Liz's question, because it is great, and I'm going to try to talk into the mic, so just know that I know.
I'll lean forward so I can see you.
So one of the challenges, so I know last year the DNR here in Wisconsin specifically put in some regulations in place to help prevent transferring, a deer carcass from a county that has CWD to a county that doesn't and things of that nature. For me, I'm a kind of guy, I have processed my own deer in the past. I'm not good at it. It takes me forever. I don't have a lot of time, whatever. That being said, by and large, I'll go to a processing place. I'll pay the $100 or whatever it is to get it processed, and that's all good and dandy. What I've never done is quartered up a deer in the field, and there's a lot of folks that I don't know that have that type of experience or education. So Liz's question then is, and thank you, Liz. I like to process my own deer. What can I do to clean the tools I use to cut up the meat so I don't cross-contaminate meat with potential CWD prions? So I guess it's a two-parter, right?
Yeah.
There's can you do a little bit of this in the field, and what does that look like? And then what's the expectation there? And if not, how are you doing that at home?
Yeah, so the idea last year was, hunters that hunt in these CWD areas can't transfer their deer up north somewhere that doesn't have CWD without first quartering that deer and leaving the spinal column in the county where you shot the deer. There's a lot of people that haven't done that. I mean, we should probably put out
seems like a tall order, right?
A tailgate quartering session, because I know it's fairly easy. I've got friends that we hunted public land down in Missouri, and we shot quite a few deer. A couple of us processed a deer into quarters and had it in a cooler in 20 minutes on a tailgate. You're not even hanging it up. There's
many hands make light work. If you got two guys, you can whack up a deer real quick.
It can be done, but there's a lot of people don't even process their deer at all, so they don't even know.
They don't know.
Drag it, truck, done. Right.
Yeah.
That's especially when we talk about gun hunting. Yeah. Right.
And the caveat to that rule was unless you bring it to a licensed processor within 72 hours. So people bring it to a processor, it was fine.
Yep.
The rule was going in play, or the proposed emergency rule is what I think we're talking about, was in place for people that want to take that deer home and process it themselves. And if a guy can go home and process it himself, then he's probably familiar with quartering and that sort of thing. So it was sort of a tough ask because there weren't dumpsters out everywhere, and they were saying, well, just throw it back where you got it, but not on public land. And the rule's important to keep CWD from spreading, but all the ponds weren't in place to make it happen.
And there needs to be enough communication ahead of time to prepare people for that.
Yeah, you need to have a place for all these carcasses to go. And our contention is that if there's dumpsters everywhere and you can create a culture of throwing deer carcasses in dumpsters, you don't have to worry about if somebody takes one from Iowa County and up to Bayfield County and processes it at their house. As long as they go and put it in a dumpster, you don't have to worry if it had CWD or not. And that's what we'd like to create, is a culture of proper disposal. And there's some uphill battles with that. And there's some landfills that decide they don't want to accept them. So we'd like to see the legislature kind of step in and tell them that you're going to accept deer carcasses. because it ends up getting expensive for people. I've talked to people that live up in Buffalo County live up in Buffalo County and have had dumpsters in the past. Well, it's getting more expensive because the place they used to take it is now not accepting deer
So you got
carcasses.
to transport that further.
So now it's farther, so it costs more
time
money.
for the driver, more fuel
Yeah.
costs, et cetera, et cetera.
So there's a lot of obstacles there. But I think it's an important thing if we can create that culture to where everybody's throwing their deer in a dumpster. And people, I'm sure, bitch about having to, well, geez, I could just throw it out behind my house. Well,
Or
things have changed in the last 15 years. You used to have to bring your deer somewhere to go get it registered.
yeah,
And
So you don't have to do that anymore. And
No.
so
You
now
don't have to do
there's
that.
a new
So
thing to compare.
now, and
we're helping. Really, they're trying to do it as a convenience factor and
Yeah.
having a dumpster to put the stuff in
And we
rather
were
than sneak off to the public land parking lot, which we all
Yeah.
know
Yep.
people do.
and we were a Luddite
And
state
just
as far as
ditch
that
it.
concerns. Like we were laggard in that region. Like there were other states way ahead of us on like the cell phone processing, right, or
Yeah.
registration. Anyways, we were one of the
Yeah.
last ones to do
yeah,
that.
we were way behind.
And that was a big alarming thing because of what it would do to the local
I
economy.
hear, and there is a point there.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I hear, in our CDAC meetings, I hear complaints every time that we want to bring back in-person registration.
To be
because
honest,
of the
I
100
kind of miss that. You
Yeah.
call it tradition, call it a silly tradition, but it was just kind of cool to be able to
you
see
get to see people.
and sometimes it's the only time you see
it's
old
good
Joe
for those
at-
businesses.
Yeah,
And
it's just
that-
the way it is.
Yeah, there's so many positive things that can come out of that. So I hear a lot of those people saying, we need to bring that back. You hear it in the CDACs and you hear it in the Conservation Congress. But then you put something like, oh, we want you to go put this in a dumpster or go get drop a head off somewhere, which is the same
difference,
Yeah,
right?
the same same
to
amount
that
of work.
point,
But
it'd be interesting if
Yeah.
we still had those registration stations. It would have been really easy to bake this into that.
yeah.
But it is what it is, right?
Yeah, we've thought about that a lot. Is how do you where do you put a dumpster that you're gonna throw deer carcasses in?
Well, and
it's
half-
hard to put it.
Half these
in
registration stations were Ma and Pa's bar, the filling station down the
Yeah.
road.
Mhm.
Little places that they're not going to want a dumpster stinking up their whole area.
Yeah,
they're
so
just not.
It's
valid.
tough
Yeah.
to find a great spot for that, but with different hunters and different organizations in these counties, we feel like there's enough places where people be able to do it, and spread 5 or 6 dumpsters out throughout a county is something that's manageable. As a matter of fact, there's a bill in the Senate right now that my wife and I and Doug Dern met with our local senator and proposed to him to fund deer carcass dumpsters for the bill is for I think 35 counties, which is where he was willing to start with that, so that's what we said. Well, if that's what you're
So you
willing
can
to
get
start with,
past,
well,
yeah.
if you're willing to get
Yeah.
something started, we went down to the Capitol a couple weeks ago and testified in front of the committee, and just about everybody supports it, but they want it to be statewide, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll
Well, if
gain
you
some
think about the
traction.
heritage and tradition of deer hunting in this state, it's practically a state holiday.
Yeah.
It is
really
a big
is.
deal thing. It's not that. It shouldn't be a hard argument.
No, and
That's good.
all of the things that the Department of Natural Resources is asking of us, as far as try to slow down the spread of CWD, are not heavy lifts
Mhm.
for any of
No,
us.
they're really not
It's
that hard.
throw your garbage away, which is something that we've been taught since we were 5 years old. Take the trash that's left over from something that you did and put it in a refuse container so it goes to a landfill, it goes where it should go.
Right.
That's a simple thing. Go get your deer tested. That doesn't cost any money.
No, it doesn't.
It's after you do it once and get it figured out. I had a guy from our outdoor club called me this morning from the kiosk. 2 years ago, I brought up CWD at one of our board meetings, and everybody looked at me like I,
You had 4
was
eyes.
talking about aliens.
Or
and
zombies.
and we have a dumpster at that club 6 months later. This year, they upped what they were willing to pay for that dumpster.
Oh, that's cool.
And we got guys that never would have considered testing a deer calling me today and saying, okay, which paper do I, what do I do with this piece? And he's like, yep, I got it for next time now. All I had to do is call and ask, and now I can do it next time without any questions. And so that's what it boils down to. If somebody goes and does it once, calls that number for help if they can't figure it out, and gets it down, it's pretty easy from there. It's not, like I said, it's not a difficult thing. Don't transport deer all over the county.
It's an interesting point that Aaron brings up here.
Put the dumpsters in the back of each county's highway department lot.
Yep.
Well, we've got highway department lots all over the place, so
yep, that's certainly
it wouldn't be a bad thing to do.
Yeah, not gonna bother doing it this
and it would probably be pretty secure. I'm sure there's going to be cameras on it, so if someone decides to get a grandiose idea to go dump garbage in it, they'd be caught.
Not to play devil's advocate too much here and put you in a weird position, but as we're talking about this, having these dumpsters, which are just roll-off dumpsters full of deer carcasses, I love the idea. I'm all in on that, and I'm going to try to help you as much as I can.
Hit me with whatever you got.
We'll talk offline. But what about birds and crows and things like that? Is there a concern that they're going to come in there and grab this stuff and then like repollinate, so to speak?
Yeah, there was a concern with that last year, and Doug Duran, he had a dumpster on his property, and he was pretty mindful about watching it for that type of thing. And there's things that you could do if that became an issue,
like 11 owl decoys.
Something like that.
Large owl decoys.
It's something that we'll probably try to put trail cameras on and make sure that things like that are not happening. It's something to certainly monitor. Doug didn't find there to be an issue really last year, but we're going to continue to. I mean, the more dumpsters that are out there, the more things that are likely to happen. Yep. But it's going to be an evolution, a process, and like finding places to put them is going to be. People in a county are going to have to group up, and show up at your CDAC meetings and talk about it and say, hey, we really want this to get going, or whatever it is. Online, any group, conservation clubs in your county,
right?
Somewhere you go to shoot, just show up to the meeting and say, hey, what are you guys doing about CWD? What can we do? This is
and worst they can do is laugh you out of there, and then you just don't go back.
I mean, that's what I did. I started showing up because I was.
Did you wear the train to hunt thing so they knew you were like?
No, these guys, all these guys on the board of the club are, they're 60-plus-year-old guys. They're the old school hunters that would never shoot a doe ever. They grew up when there were no deer around. I knew it was going to be a tough sell, but I just started showing up at those meetings and just introduced myself and started talking to them afterwards, having a beer with them, and
be friendly, be personable.
And I knew some of them because I shot archery there, but you just start introducing it little by little and say, this is something that I'm concerned about. Don't push it. And like I said, I started showing up in July. By November, they're willing to throw $300 at a dumpster and have it on their property. And it took a little bit of talking and debating. But
it's got to be good. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's got to be good for them too, because if you want more club members, that's going to get more traction there.
Show that you're doing something in the community and that you're concerned about it.
And that's what it's about. It's being part of the community in a positive way.
Yeah, and even if it's not about CWD, even if you don't care about CWD, it's keeping deer out of the ditches and from being thrown on your back road and out of the culverts and out of the public land parking areas. Yep. It's a public service no matter how you look at it. We had guys dropping off carcasses that were like, oh, do you want to test that for CWD? Nope. Don't care. Not going to get it tested, but I'm glad I don't have to dump it somewhere else.
Perfect.
Okay. Right. That's fine. That's great.
That's still better.
That's still inadvertently helping the cause, and it's a public service. Like I said, it's really important to create that culture.
Yes.
Some interesting comment just came through from Stu. He said Steve Ranella just did a piece on a hospital that was not able to sterilize an instrument after 3 sterilizing cycles when testing someone for the prion that caused mad cow disease, which shares the commonalities with CWD. That's interesting. And I'll only take a small, this is not a promotion for Scent Crusher, but I know that their technology comes from the medical space out in the Eastern medicine where they sterilize things through that same ozone technology. So that, I just wonder what that looks like. But
yeah, I know that autoclaving will not kill it, which is the process of cleaning those instruments. So yeah, when it comes to variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is what people can catch from the mad cow outbreak that was in Europe. Yeah, that's exactly right. People caught it from
unsterilized instruments.
Well, they were sterilized.
Well, they were sterilized, but it wasn't
you
to
can't
a degree.
Get rid of.
You said 18,000 degrees. It takes to
1800
degrees.
Yeah.
Good memory. I just say the temperature of the sun.
It's in the ballpark.
It's accurate.
Hot.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's not a good way to deal with prions as they are. There's been some research and ongoing research with soil. There's certain soils high in humic acid seem to have less prions or seem to get rid of prions in some way. And there's debate to be done there yet and more research to be done as far as the soil issues. So there's people working on every aspect of this. And I think it's really important that we as hunters
the more we
work
can do
on our portion of it.
The more we can do to help them, the better.
We're not going to cure the disease,
no,
but we can slow it down from taking on the next county, and that's what we're working on in our area, where we're trying to keep the population levels to where the recommended number is. And that's a problem because when you start losing hunters and people don't want to shoot does, you just have a big overpopulation of deer, and it's hard for us to take enough deer for the whole county.
It's going to get harder if we don't.
And I can attest to that. I mean, the times that we visit your area of the state a couple times a year, and I'm just amazed at how many deer are there. It's nuts. Prime time, you roll, an hour before sunset, you roll around Redstone, and it's just they're everywhere. They come out of the woodwork. They're out of every valley, every little cut, every backyard that isn't inhabited. There they are.
Yep.
It's nothing to see 30 to 50 deer in some of these hay fields. Doesn't anybody shoot does up there? Apparently not.
Some people don't.
No.
Some people are not.
And trying to get permission is difficult.
Yeah, permission's difficult. Some people own 600 acres and they're not going to shoot a doe because they want to grow big bucks. And even QDMA in their program, it says that's not the way to grow big bucks. You need to strive for that 1-to-1 doe to buck ratio is what helps bucks get bigger. And so there's a lot of that's a whole different subject, but there's a lot of ideas out there about we don't want to shoot does and you can't make us shoot does, and it increased the population, which like I said before, it helps perpetuates that the spread of those young bucks that are the ones that most likely to have it, and that's how it travels via deer.
So let's wrap up. And
I thought we just got started.
That's how I feel, man. we can keep going a little bit. I'm okay with that. But I would I would challenge you to challenge the listeners. What are the key takeaways here, and what are some of the next actions we can take as hunters as we embark, especially gun hunting season right around the corner, but also bow in this state and other states? What are some of the biggest takeaways and the next actions?
I realized that Liz asked how to deal with our utensils, and we didn't answer that. So I'm going to start with
Let's answer that. Sorry, please.
50-50 bleach and water solution.
Liz likes 50-50 bleach and water solution.
Oh, did she just say that?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. She asked that question, and we didn't neglect it on purpose. I just got back to it now. Yeah, it's a 50-50 bleach and water solution. If you cut a deer up with a set of knives, wash them in that 50-50, set them aside. Next deer you get, if you haven't had your results back yet, I use a different knife just in case, man. If I cut one up with a knife and it's CWD positive, I might just move on to a new knife.
Yeah.
Does that go for gutting or processing?
Processing. Typically, the main area is the spinal
it's the
column.
fluid. So
Yeah.
even if you hit the ball joints in the hindquarters, fluid does come out of those.
Yeah, I mean, it can be in the meat too. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's up to your tolerance for risk.
Because I know we all have
but
granddad's knife,
I'm
right? That's
probably-
why I ask. We all have that one knife we've used, right, every year.
Yeah, when I get close to the spinal column or I'm cutting something, I've got one knife that I broke the tip off a long time ago, and that's my cutting the head off knife. That's the one I use, or this one meat saw is the one that I use for cutting things on the deer, just in case. I mean, it doesn't take that much time to take a couple extra precautions, and we don't know enough to just say whatever happens. It's not
Right.
there's some things I can do that with, but a deteriorating brain disease potential is not one of those things. So as far as takeaways, the Department of Natural Resources is asking us to do a few things. They're not, like I said, they're not heavy lifts. They're dispose, get your animal tested, don't transport it to an area of the state that doesn't have CWD. I mean, there's virtually every state has those rules. Don't transport a deer into our state from somewhere that has CWD.
Right.
It's true. So I hunt Grant County, which I mentioned earlier, and for whatever reason, there's no good cabins in Wisconsin, in that region of our state. I don't believe me, I've looked, and the one we had got sold. So there's that, and as a result, Iowa, for whatever reason, has the most beautiful cabins right across the river.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not an option because if we get a deer, we can't transport it back over to Iowa. Right. So actually, it emailed Kevin Wallenfang, our big game ecologist.
Oh yeah, the state.
And
of
it
Iowa.
had said, hey, if I stay in Iowa at a cabin and I hunt Grant County, can I bring a deer carcass over? And they said, no, absolutely not. So we reached out to the Iowa DNR and they said,
No way.
no, you're better off just finding some shitty cabin in Wisconsin, which we did. So that's.
Does it have wheels under it?
It might.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not have been used for a
Or
long time,
somebody
but it's a
stole 'em.
trailer park.
No, it works.
So
Roof over your head. Deer camp.
it is.
So yeah, I mean, a few things that just reasons to care. I say I have a few of them down here. Like the future of the deer herd. It's been shown that out west, at least, when CWD reaches a certain prevalence, that deer herd actually declines in number because of CWD. There's research papers out there that show that. We don't want that to happen here. We have a different dynamic of deer here, but there's a number somewhere that's the threshold. We want to avoid that. That goes along with future of hunting. We want to be able to hunt. We don't want to have to go somewhere else to hunt because every deer we shoot here has CWD. The economics of it. We want people coming here to put money into our state so that we can make deer hunting, squirrel hunting, grouse hunting, all the other hunting better. And if somebody's coming here to deer hunt, they're going to put money into all of those things inadvertently. That's all money that our state can be taken in, but may not if we become the state that's got too many CWD positives. And why would I go there when I could go somewhere else? We want people coming here. The land values we touched on, that's not going to affect everybody, but it's something that
It's an impact
to consider. It's an impact for everybody. Food, you should not eat it. According
One of
to
the questions that just came through, actually.
according to the World Health Organization and the CDC and every.
But I don't feel comfortable doing it. Like, so regardless if it's okay or not, if that deer is tested positive for CWD, guess what I'm not doing? I'm not eating it. I'm just not.
somebody gives me any food and
It just
says
feels weird, right?
this was gonna die of a really bad disease, but it probably can't. It almost certainly can't be transmitted to you. I don't care what it is. I'm probably not going to eat it, and
Right.
especially something, like I said, the tolerance for risk is up to each individual person. If you don't care, it's up to you to make that decision. But if you have a CWD positive deer in your freezer and you're feeding it to your family or friends or anybody that comes over, you're making that decision for them. And we just don't know everything there is to know about this disease. It hasn't transferred to humans as of now that we know of. It's not impossible.
And are the butchers testing for this, right? Is that part of their process?
I
and
don't
procedure, or
think
do you
so.
You have to do it differently,
No,
right?
they're not. I mean,
So you still want to take it to a testing facility that we
you're
found on
still
the other side?
so. I mean,
That's
they're-
okay. I'm glad I'm asking this.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the butchers that I know of, there's no sign out front that says CWD testing here.
Mm-hmm.
And I did inquire at one local butcher, and they said, no, we don't do that.
Wow.
You have to take it to the DNR station. They'll do that.
Now I have noticed some of the DNR will hang out at the butcher stations. No, I
That's
don't know
great.
what
That may be.
Okay.
Maybe they're checking licenses.
That could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be
I
more
know
so.
they're
than
aging
anything.
some deer and things like that, but I
Yeah.
don't think they were doing the
I don't
the
think
kind
they
of
were.
racing.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, it's upon each of us to take action to make sure our deer gets tested. Find out before the season starts.
Mhm.
Hey, where do I get my deer tested?
Mhm.
Find out where the closest place to you is, and make your hunting buddies do the same thing. Say,
Mhm.
okay, on whatever day of gun season, we're gonna all take our deer down and drop off the heads and fill out the paperwork and get this done.
And there's venison donation stations too. Like
Yes.
I would think that if you're going to give it to them, you want to validate that it's not positive.
Yeah, there's food pantry programs, and most of those, I believe, do have to wait
Okay.
for the testing. And
Makes sense.
that's something that we need to do is find a place. And the next project on my list is work on the donation aspect of this. Because if we want to lower deer populations in some of these areas that have really high population, the deer population in Sauk County is 50% above objective.
It's huge.
I mean, and growing, because 4 years ago they said we want
You saw the curve, right? I mean,
to keep this deer population number at 25,000 or whatever it is. I think it was around 25,000. We want to keep it at 25,000. Well, since then, it's only gone up to 38,000 estimated population of deer in Sauk County. That's 12,000 over objective. I mean,
That's a lot.
There's a lot of deer. So, working back to my point is, we need a place for those deer to go if you want people to harvest more does. You need an outlet for those deer. You can't expect somebody to shoot 5 deer a year if they're only going to eat 2.
Right.
So it's the same with the dumpster and carcass
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, my
you know.
family's a venison eating champion. We'll eat 3 to 4 deer a year.
We take in 5 at least
Yeah.
a year, and so creating a place that people know that they'll be able to bring deer, or working on a network of people who don't hunt but would like deer.
I have friends that every year that say, "Hey, if you get something,
Yeah,
let me know."
Yeah, and I got
creating a
people too.
network like that where you know that you can get rid of it before you go and fill that tag for some of these people, then you can ask them a little more to take an extra deer this year, a couple extra deer this year. So that's something that people can start thinking about, and how can we facilitate a program that's better at that, and look into what the DNR already has going, and try to make it better. So there's a lot that we can do and work on. I would just say, wrapping up, that the Department of Natural Resources is here to help the deer herd. They're not, nobody's looking to extinguish the deer herd in Wisconsin. They're tasked with making sure that the deer herd is healthy as best they can and viable for the next generation. As Teddy Roosevelt would say, those in the womb of time down the road. They're their obligation is to the deer herd for that resource to be healthy and moving onward. They're not out there. The DNR is not trying to make it difficult for hunters to go about hunting and doing their thing.
They're there to conserve the land, and the land includes all the animals in it.
And that is their obligation, and it's our obligation as hunters to do what we can. So find out what the DNR is doing. Ask questions. That's fine. Question things is good, but educate yourself as to why things are being done before you start just blaming the DNR for things.
And that's the hardest part for a lot of folks is just educating. They believe what they've been taught from generations ago, and well, it's got to be right because why would it be wrong?
Yeah, my dad said it.
Yeah, Dad said it. Grandpa said it. His dad said it.
Yeah.
So
if you're going to research something on CWD, don't just go to Google. Go to Google Scholar. I believe
look
it's
at some scholarly articles.
Google.scholar.com or scholar.google.com. One or the other.
And there's other EBSCO hosts and there's other scholarly articles that exist. Especially if you're a student. By the way, if you're a student somewhere, like please use your resources.
Yeah, that's where you can find things that have been vetted and you know it's true. Because if you ask any question on the internet, there'll be some website that'll say yes, you're right. So do your due diligence. Show up to your CDAC meetings, show up to the spring hearings for the Conservation Congress, and vote on all of these things. Every one of us has a say, and we're really unique in Wisconsin that we have the Conservation Congress, and we have these CDACs for every county that we can go down and provide our input for all of these different issues. And people don't do it. We had like 5 people show up to our CDAC meeting last year.
Yeah, wow.
And I think that's fairly common across the board for counties. So
we could put a CDAC on one of these.
Show up and provide your input, whether they go along with what your input is or not. At least you're there and you're learning about why they're doing what they're doing, and that's a good place to do it. So
yeah, and I've been to some of the conservation congresses where the meetings in April. Usually, I believe.
Second Monday in April.
Yeah. Jefferson counties in particular, and I bet there were 30, 40 people there. But this was probably 15 years ago now.
Out of probably 15,000 that hunt in that county or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's about... it might be that.
And Mitch, how do people find you if they want to ask you more questions, or Liz? Obviously, Liz has been in the comments, but for those listening to the podcast, you seem to know quite a bit.
Yeah, you can DM me on Instagram or just ask me on Instagram on a post, mitch.baker.100.
Cool.
And Facebook, maybe I'll comment in, so you'll be able to find me. There's 1 million Mitch Bakers on Facebook, so you wouldn't be able to find me very
popular guy.
Well, here's the thing. So on the Where to Hunt podcast, I didn't plant the seed well enough. I usually do with every guest, and every guest traditionally comes in on a call, so I'm glad that you took the time to come here in person, because I won't interrupt you nearly as bad as if you were on the phone. If you've heard other shows.
I can see when you want to say something. This
is perfect. So my question to you is, can you share your most memorable hunt with the audience?
Man, to be honest, I've got a lot of hunts that were pretty awesome and great hunts. The ones that are the most memorable, the ones that stick with me, that I think about the most, are the ones where it didn't work out. The ones that I had the opportunity there, it was, a great buck or a great bull, and everything worked out the way that it needed to, except for the execution. Those are the ones I think about the most.
Those are the ones you learn the most from, though, right? Yes. That's got to be part of it.
Absolutely.
It's indelible. It sticks with you.
Absolutely. But, the most rewarding, I would say, man, just going out and elk hunting in some of the areas that I elk hunted the last couple of years in Idaho, didn't bring something home. Both years were 2 of those years where I absolutely should have. But just the being out there and going places that 95% of people would not go to, You're walking on places where you're like, this is a little sketchy, but going out and doing those things are super rewarding. But the particular hunt that probably was the most rewarding for me was my wife and I had moved to Arizona, and we started hunting public land deer down there, and I started like, I'm gonna shoot a mule deer with my bow. And so I started like picking spots on the map and going out and just learning hard lessons and learning things that I shouldn't ever do that again. That's a whole I've got enough stories to make a whole podcast on that. But when I finally
That's awesome.
Was able to put it together and connected on a little Coos deer buck,
That's cool.
was, that was probably the most rewarding for me. That's the most memorable as far as a harvest goes, where
Those aren't easy to hunt.
no,
How many miles did you hike for that?
the distance from my truck was not far,
Okay.
but the hill
Sure.
was very steep, and I had a lot of days invested. That was like the third year we lived there, so I had a lot of days invested in putting
Boots to ground and
yeah.
scouting and figuring it out.
yeah, and I'd been out there, and Liz had gone out a few times with me, and we put on a lot of miles. But that particular one, there was a really nice Coos deer buck. For people who don't know about Coos deer bucks, they're miniature whitetails.
Yep, they're
70
high desert
inches
whitetail.
is the Pope and Young minimum. And I spotted a buck on, I think it was a Friday night or Saturday night, and it was bedded down. There's no way for me to get close to him, and it was probably around a 100-inch buck. It was like, whoa, this is
That's big.
awesome. Went back, slept in my truck. Hadn't really planned on it. Slept in my truck, though, so because I lived like 45 minutes away. I was like, I'm just going to stay here and make sure that I'm up there first thing in the morning. And got up in there, and that buck and a smaller buck were chasing each other around, rutting hard. I never saw a doe. Those two bucks chasing each other
Fuck you, pal.
all day.
She's mine.
Those were the only two I ever saw. And the wind worked. I had to work around a big valley and got to the other side. And by the time I got up there, I watched that small buck bed in a spot that I thought, I can get above him if I get to that bush. And it was an hour later I got there, and I knew I'd never be able to see him when I got
Yeah.
there. So I just got there and sat like, well, if he's still here, he'll stand up from somewhere down right below me. And eventually he did. He stood up 21 yards away.
Wow.
I had no idea he was there. And
You snuck in
there's
like
not
a ninja.
trees. There's just bushes, and there's like one branch laying there, and he was a lot closer than I thought he was going to be. And
Wow.
I ended up putting a good shot on him, and he went off maybe like 50 yards and just over, and
Done.
I could see him there, and it was awesome. I went down there and like super, super happy. It was cool. I was standing there. I put my camera on a tripod, take a couple pictures before the sun went down, and got over by the deer. I hear something. I look up. That 100-inch buck
Oh, no.
walk like literally 25 yards above me, standing there, and my camera's on the tripod like 5 feet away from me. So I was able to dig out of my pocket my cell phone, and this is like before cell phone
Yep.
phone.
BlackBerry
cameras
maybe
were
or
in
something,
it,
right?
It was like a flip phone.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was a little, it was
Green.
beyond flip phone.
The Nokia. Or,
There's
Yeah.
there, you can't take good pictures with them.
No.
But I was able to get it out, start it up, get it going, which took minutes,
Yeah.
and trying to do it without him running off and doing it really slow. And I ended up getting a bunch of blurry pictures of
Yeah.
him standing there
Yeah.
like 25 yards just staring at me,
Yeah.
which it was cool. And it was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I got this guy that's like this, and that one's like this, but I don't care. I got this one. It was really super
cool.
cool.
Those
So-
are such a hard animal. It's an animal that's on my list. I have a brother my only brother, he lives down in Arizona.
I love it.
I keep trying to prod him in to get back into hunting, and it's just not something he has time to do right now, running his own business and things. So,
I went down last year and
did you?
chased him again. It was
Sweet.
pretty fun.
Cool, man.
That's awesome.
What's on the horizon right now?
Man, new baby. I'm working on being a stay-at-home dad, I guess, right
High
now.
five to that.
for a good portion of each week. So that's the big thing. So
That's
pretty
the important
excited about
thing.
that. And
Cool. And here you are taking time hanging out with us, goofballs.
Deer season's upon us, so
Yeah.
we've got a CWD kiosk to go check on, and
Sure.
I got to run down there tomorrow and get these dumpsters lined up.
Your
and we got
child's
that
going to get one heck of an
legislation.
education seeing all that stuff going on.
Yeah,
It'll be good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully, one of us will. I'm expecting Liz to get out next weekend, harvest a buck, and we can bring a little baby out there and
No
we can see how
pressure,
it's
Liz.
There you go. Well, thanks again for taking time out of your
yeah,
busy
absolutely,
schedule.
man. Anytime.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
We'll go ahead and end the live broadcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and entering your comments in and participating. No calls on this one. That's okay. Appreciate you just listening because this is a hard one to interrupt and call. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, and
Thank you,
thanks,
guys.
Mitch, for coming.
Yep.